wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show, and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. This episode is sponsored by Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. Today we are joined by Josh Pierry. Josh is the founder and CEO of Pierry Inc., a Wonderman company. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. We're going to be talking about investing in your long-term digital transformation. I know you and your team are experts about this. So before we sort of dive into today's topic, maybe you can tell us a little about what you and the Pierry Inc. team are up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, we are a Salesforce shop, and we specialize on working on the Salesforce platform and digital transformation. So, that can be everything from a B2B to a B2C, and we specialize a lot in data integrations, and specifically multi-cloud within Salesforce. So it can be your Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Analytics, or some of their new DMP products as well. So we really do a completely comprehensive aspect of Salesforce and really try and get people up to the best they can be digitally, not only from their data put out, but to outbound communication as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And like I said, you are an expert kind of in this idea of digital transformation, and we're going to be talking about investing in your long-term digital transformation. You've worked with several companies that kind of run the gamut of the two extremes. You've got the companies that sort of embrace a one large change. They're trying to bring themselves to the very front with one giant investment in their digital transformation. Then you have the others that it's a constant iterative sort of digital transformation, a very constant process that's baked into their company. Like I said, you've worked with both extremes. You've worked with everything in the middle. What are some of your thoughts? And I know you've got some real world examples to share with us as well today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. So some of our clients, we can't mention all the names on it, but if you can think about Silicon Valley, high-flying tech startups, they're clients of ours, or we've worked with them, as well as retailers that are just looking to make that change. And Gymboree was one that we just did a full digital transformation with, so kind of excited to talk about that one. And it's interesting, right? I think that, companies, there's a DNA that goes into each one of them, right? And when you're working with Silicon Valley companies, and we'll kind of take two extremes on it, right? Silicon Valley companies, they come in, they're going to push the envelope. It's, a lot of the time, constant innovation all the time. How can you do it? And I think there's a lot of really good benefits of that. And then on the flip side, you've got, and we'll use Gymboree as kind of an example on it, which is a brick and mortar retailer that was looking at doing a huge change in terms of their digital transformation on it. So they kind of, waited a number of years and then bang, did, a full digital transformation all at once. And it's interesting. And, I think, some of the key things that we found is, being able to do it on an iterative process really allows you to, on a very fast scale, make changes pretty quickly. I think part of the things that can be tough on that, though, is you have to stay up a lot on technology, try and figure out where your customers are going to go. And that can be a B2B customer, it can be a B2C customer, versus, if you wait a number of years on it, then try and make that change on it, it becomes a lot harder from an institutional perspective. And as long as you get that buy-in, you can go ahead and do it. But then one of the things we recommend is if you are able to do that, really make sure that you sustain that change afterwards so that you don't go back to not investing in your digital future, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, it's almost like you're trying to break that cycle. I mean, and I think you had an example about a company that was recently sort of they were actively part of this. They were breaking a cycle. They were moving something to the top in terms of airlines, and it's important to sort of keep that in mind moving forward, so that you don't keep slipping down and having to make another big leap to the top.
Yeah, and I think and again, this spans whatever your customer may be. Right now, we're in such a digitally connected universe. Plus, how that view is then impacted by your customer. So, for example, one of the things in, United, that's part of one of the examples I was using, not related to digital transformation, et cetera, on it, but, United has launched this new Polaris business class, right? And I think anyone who's flown United knew that on some of the long hauls, they didn't have the best first class experience on it. So they did a huge overhaul and now trying to compete with some of the other experiences that are out there. And I think it's just tough, especially when we see some of the other news with United that's coming in, to really say, hey, you know what, I want to raise my hand and go over and try this new thing, because, that United historically has not been the fastest mover changer on some of this stuff. And I think that really translates over into the digital transformation space as well. If you as your brand isn't kind of embracing that digital transformation and being on the forefront of it constantly, I think people start to look at it and say, okay, it's a good product, but they're clearly not staying on top of where things should be with it. And I think it can be detrimental for it. And I think that's one of the things that I love about the Gymboree story is, they looked at it and said, hey, we're behind in terms of where we need to be. Our customers expect more. This is kind of what the landscape is. They made the investment and they're staying on top of it. And it's part of the reason, and I'll do a little plug for the Salesforce platform, why we love it, because you're able to constantly iterate and really stay on top of things, because you've got a single code base and we look at it as an integrated solution that you can then kind of stay top of mind and really be able to message out and delight your customers with it. And I think, however that path is, you've got to be able to stay on top of it, because otherwise you're going to start to lose mind share. And digital is where a lot of people are expecting you to be these days.
Today's growth story is all about search engine marketing. The company we're highlighting is SentinelOne. This challenger cybersecurity brand was set out to disrupt the endpoint protection space. Their brand was top-notch, their product was innovative, but they were struggling to gain traction online in an already developed industry. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first quarter of working with Directive, SentinelOne was able to increase their organic traffic by 128% and overall lead volume by an outstanding 251%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Josh, do you have just a couple of pieces of advice for any of our listeners that are thinking to themselves right now, I would like to also be a little bit more invested in staying on top of our digital transformation? Are there things that they can look for? Are there problem areas that they can focus on first and foremost? Any piece of advice in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing, and again, this is, being a business owner myself, I always kind of look at, whatever I'm going to invest in, is there going to be an ROI that comes with that, right? I still see projects sometimes where people are like, hey, we just have to do this digital thing and let's just make it happen. I think the first piece of advice is, if you want to start a digital transformation within your organization or really level up your digital capabilities, try and find a piece where you can establish a really well-known ROI, right? And if that's, for example, you've got a current e-com platform and by moving it up or doing something else, you can get a lift in terms of conversion rates or a lift in terms of products sold or whatever it is, make that case and start there. Right? Because what's going to happen is if you do your first part of digital transformation right, and it doesn't matter if it's an iterative process or you're starting out from ground one and you've got a whole bunch of old technology that you've got to do on it, once you've got that first piece going, it's going to be a lot easier to really bring that forward momentum within the organization, start to touch and do more things. And one of the things that we found is if you have not gone digital yet and you start to go digitally on it, we see a huge ROI just right out of the gate. And that really helps bolster the ability and to be able to really move the organization towards a much better digital position.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And Josh, you had mentioned being a business owner. I know that this isn't even your first business. I think you said this was your third business. And so, one of the most amazing things about getting to have founders and business leaders such as yourself on the show is we've been talking about this idea of legacy, because we think those are certainly the types of persona that are sort of intentional and thinking about this idea of legacy. They have a vision, they're executing on the vision. So Josh, if you wouldn't mind sort of sharing with our audience, what kind of legacy are you hoping to leave behind at the end of the day, whether that's personal, professional, or even a combination of the two?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I started my first business when I was 22, and I did beer festivals back in Boston, Massachusetts.
How did you ever get out of that business, Josh? I don't understand.
Everybody asks me, and I got to tell you, I love beer. I love craft beer. But, when I start to think about, a scaling perspective, and we can go deep dive into, why beer is tough to scale. But then also when you kind of think about legacy on it, for me, I really want to make the world a better place at the end of the day. And I think sometimes you're able to mix that with your professional business piece on it. Sometimes, you have to do the business, succeed at that, and then go off and hopefully do some great things for the world. And I think you could look at Bill Gates is kind of a great example of that, and some of the pledges that he does with his cash and time on that one as well. Look, I think from my perspective, and I don't know a whole lot of my background on it, but I've lived in Japan, I've lived in Russia, I've traveled all over the world. I speak both of those languages. The U.S. is one of the most amazing places in the world. I love America. And if I could bring a legacy here, it would be really helping to make sure that we're able to bring in the best talent from around the world to continue to make America great on it. And, for me, I'm a third generation. Both sides of my families are immigrants from other countries on it. And when I really look at this, I want to be able to make sure that people have the opportunity that I had. And if you work hard, if you're smart, I want people to be able to succeed. And whatever I can do to help that, that's where I want to be. So, some of the things that I've looked at are, how do you take entrepreneurs and get them socially involved in either nonprofit organizations or in political organizations? So that's some of the things that I'm thinking about. And, I really want to make sure that America continues to be one of the greatest countries in the world.
That's fantastic. It certainly sounds like a great legacy. And it does. I mean, it speaks to this entrepreneurial spirit almost, is that leaving the world a better place is kind of a recurring theme, especially as we continue to ask that question in 2018. So that's fantastic. We definitely wish you success with the legacy. We wish you continued success with Pierry Inc. Josh, if any of our listeners are interested in connecting with you after today's episode, they want to find out more about Pierry Inc. They want to connect with you. They want to find out more about what we've been talking about. What's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So our website is pierryinc.com. You can also look me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Josh Pierry there. And please connect with me that way. Would love to talk with you about anything from, if you're an entrepreneur looking to grow a business, to Salesforce, to digital transformation, and kind of anything in between there. And if you happen to want to talk about beer or wine, I also love talking about that too. So seriously, anything I can do to help, I'd love to.
That's fantastic. Well, Josh, thank you again so much. It really was a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks so much for the time.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.